Happy Wednesday. We've got to talk about week 0 recap as well as my tiered preseason poll. All that and more here on Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. I am your host, Jay. Thank y'all for pulling up here on the YouTube channel as well as listening wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you're here, please like, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5 stars. You don't think we deserve it? Go ahead and give us 5 anyway and gift it. So on today's episode of Unfair Sports, we're going to enjoy a Wednesday of diving into all the best content possible in the world. We're going to lead off with week 0 recap. We're going to talk about the Navy game as well as the USC game because we're keeping it ranked. And then I'm going to give you my tiered preseason top 25. And we may dabble into a little bit of Colorado and Tennessee. Hit us up on the Unfair fan line, 430-901-1906, and let us know what you think of the show. We would love to get your strongest opinions, and possibly you may end up on one of these episodes. So hit us up, 430-901-1906. Man, I got to say, week 0 was, of course, of excitement. We are in football, baby. We are headed into week 1, so we've got to recap what happened in the first week. And so, as I told you all before, as we're building up this show, my Unfair Sports podcast, the YouTube channel, the podcast itself, my goal here is to give you under an hour of just solid content. We're going to talk through hopefully 7 to 8 minute segments on each, maybe 4 to 5 different topics, and we're going to fly right through it. But today, the last portion of the show will definitely be longer because we're really going to go through the preseason tiers that I have. I'm not doing a top 25. I've professed this more before and told everyone I hate any poll that comes out before week 4. So mine will be tiered out. I'm going to have 4 tiers of 30 teams that will tell you who I think are the best teams in the country. And we're going to keep it at that. Every week we will tier them out based upon who I think can make the college football playoffs, who's playoff bound, who can make a New Year's Six playoff, as well as who do I think is going to make a bowl game, and which is going with those 30 teams, and that's it. I mean, of course, there's more than that, but we're going to look at the top 30 teams in the country there. But we're going to lead off this entire conversation. We've got to talk about week 0, man. Week 0 was great. You had some excitement coming from the Notre Dame Navy game, and there's reasons why there should be excitement there. And then we got questions from the USC and San Jose State game. If you watch my boy Ty Hayes from Around the Table Sports, his Through the Haze on Monday morning, he really broke it down well. And there's a few points he made that I definitely got to touch on. And so we'll be diving into all of that. So let's start off with the first game here on week 0, which is Navy versus Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame walked in here and cooked them 42-3 out in Dublin, Ireland. So they traveled across the country to get drubbed. If I'm correct, 2016 Navy upset Notre Dame. So Brian Kelly felt that one. And Marcus Freeman said, nah, that's not going to happen. And so when I watched this game, there was a couple of things that jumped out to me. First and foremost, it appears that Notre Dame has a quarterback. Now, granted, if you went on there and looked at Twitter or any social media site, basically everybody was saying that Hartman's won the Heisman. He went out there 19 for 23, 251, 4 tutties. He looked good. But he's also got 3,000 snaps for his career. I think that's what they said on the broadcast. He's a super senior. He has played 6 years of college football. He leveraged that COVID year. I mean, he threw for 4,000 yards his, technically senior year in college. So we've seen him go out there and play. I mean, he missed his second year due to injury and was able to add that additional year. But we've seen Sam Hartman put up numbers. And the good thing for Hartman is that he's walking into a team that really needed a quarterback. Remember, they lost their offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. And so for Notre Dame, the biggest thing was figuring out their identity, figuring out what they want to do. And now they have a captain in Sam Hartman that's going to make a difference for them. The best part about Hartman for them is this. He's old. And it's no shade to him. Being 24 years old in college football, I mean, it feels like an eternity. But the good thing for him is, I mean, he's a year younger than Jalen Hurts, who's going into his second NFL contract, and roughly about the same age as Hendon Hooker, who is an older quarterback in the NFL right now. He's not going to really play much his first year because of that knee injury that happened right before Rose at the South Carolina game. So Hartman has an opportunity to, he'll be an older player, and some teams don't mind it. Stetson Bennett's out there doing some things. And so it depends on what those teams feel like they want in the NFL. But outside of that, this gives Notre Dame, to me, a good advantage in just the field play. They've got an experienced quarterback who's seen just about everything, so he should be prepared every single week going into these games. And so I can't even sleep on Notre Dame anymore. I got that Notre Dame came in here ranked number 13 in the country for the most part, ESPN's poll, and I'll question it, of course. I'm just like, we'll see what they look like. But getting Sam Hartman, to me, makes a difference. Audric Estime, that he's bowling ball 5.5 yards per carry. He had 95 yards and a touchdown. If Notre Dame's smart, that 191 yards they rushed for in this game is not going to be the last time they do it. They're going to pound the ball. But Sam Hartman gives them an edge that really helps them this coming season. And so I'm not here. Like I said, I can't knock what they did. I can't knock their performance. I can't even question how well they perform, but he's out here balling. And that's going to be a big deal for them going forward, especially because the key thing that Notre Dame is going to need to do is, in order to be successful this season, is make sure they got some competent quarterback play, which we question after Tommy Rees left. They made a promotion from within at the offensive coordinator position. So letting Gerard Parker move up and replace Tommy Rees probably was one of the smartest things that they did. And Tommy Rees going down to Alabama, we're going to see what that looks like. And then he took their old quarterback, Buckner. And so because of that, we got to ask the question is, can Notre Dame move forward? And so I'm excited to see. I asked the question on Twitter. People have laughed at me about it, but I asked the question based upon the way they played in this game, will they give USC problems? I think they can give Ohio State problems. It's just the way Hartman plays with so much confidence. So they look good. I believe that they're one of these teams that we cannot sleep on this coming season. Their schedule is quite favorable as well. And so when you look at who they have to play over the next couple of weeks, you have, pull up Notre Dame's schedule. They go to Tennessee State next week at home, which will be easy. When they travel to North Carolina State, which I believe they'll win that game. Central Michigan should be a win. Ohio State's going to be a challenge. I don't see them winning that game, but I would not be surprised, especially because Ohio State has to bring in a new quarterback. I'll talk about that and my meaning behind that when I go through my tiers, because there's a reason why I feel like with a lot of these. Traveling to Duke, traveling to Louisville, they should be able to win those. But USC coming to town on the 14th of October is going to be a fascinatingly fun game, because we'll talk about them on the other side, but we've always got the same question about USC. What is that defense going to look like? Lincoln Riley will put together some of the most fantastic offenses in college football. Very creative, very well executed, but we have to ask the question, what are they going to look like playing defense? And luckily for us, Notre Dame has shown us what they're going to look like on the offensive side. Now, granted, the most you get out of a week 0 game, especially playing a team like Navy, who just got a new coach and it's not starting off very well for him, is you get an understanding of what the identity is going to be. Notre Dame walked out there and took the lead 28-0 to start the first half. They walked in to dominate and finished the game 42 and somehow gave up a field goal in the fourth quarter, in which I'm kind of intrigued as to why Navy actually kicked a field goal. Like, why would you even do that when you're losing that bad? There's no reason to kick field goals. Don't go for points. And so, yeah, they basically waved the white flag. Let's put it that way. And that's kind of disappointing to me. Go for the tutties. You got to go for points, even if you don't. I'd rather you lose. Honestly, I'd rather you lose, take 0 points, and take 3 points in the fourth quarter. If you would have kicked that field goal in the first half, I wouldn't be saying anything. But they kicked that in the fourth quarter. Like, what's the value in that? But the thing about it is Notre Dame walked in there and gave us a dominant performance, something you're supposed to do. And I know, granted, we're all saying, oh, it's Navy, they're supposed to do that. Yes, they did what they're supposed to do. They executed on the game plan and made it happen. Believe me, we're going to talk about another game and you're going to ask questions of, yeah, did they do that right? And that's what it is. So I think Notre Dame's going to be fun to watch. Hop in the comments. Let your boy know what's your thoughts. Do you feel like Notre Dame can give us something good this coming season? Of course, I'll look through all of these comments and I'll be chopping up with you all on that. We definitely need to talk about what Notre Dame looks like coming season. Do you feel like Notre Dame is someone to keep our eyes on? Because based upon their schedule being quite favorable with a veteran quarterback, we've got 3 games that's going to be fun from Ohio State, USC, and Clemson this coming season. Whew, it's going to be fun. Okay, let's jump into the second game. Okay, game number 2, we have USC San Jose State. And of course, I know I had to talk about it. I'm a Sooner fan. We had to dive into this game because everybody was talking noise. Like everybody's been losing their mind on this game, which is even more hilarious to me. But everybody has been losing their mind because if you watched this game, you've got more questions than answers about USC. Because as I mentioned when I talked about the Notre Dame Navy game, yes, week 0 doesn't tell you much except for what these teams could potentially be or look like. And so when I look at this game, of course, we know that Caleb Williams is it. Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. He threw for 278, 11 yards per pass, 4 tutties. He did what he was supposed to do. Hell, they even brought in Miller Moss for a while. He threw for 63 yards. Now, Malachi Nelson threw 3 passes in the game and only completed 1 of them, but that's not the point. They walked in there and did what we expected them to do on the offensive side of the ball. You want to know who the truth is? I'm going to give them their praise right now. Zachariah Branch, Z Branch, yeah, that kid's the truth. He is everything advertised and more. Like, I don't have a question at all about him. He literally walked in there and looked like, yeah, the best player on the field outside of Caleb. I mean, he was everywhere. I think what all-purpose yards, he had almost 200 yards of all-purpose yards. I didn't write down the exact number, but he had 66 yards on punts, 96 yards on that kick return touchdown that he made. And then he went out there on the offensive side, caught 4 catches for 58 yards, and then he ran the ball for 12 yards. Yeah. That's about 200 yards of all-purpose yards plus. He's going to be it. Like, he's going to be the offensive weapon that Lincoln Riley has dreamed of. He's really good at everything. And that's a freshman, guys, true freshman. So USC's got a weapon on the offensive side. Running game was okay. You know, Austin Jones got his 54 carries. I was wondering who was going to really carry the load, but it looks like him and Marshawn Lloyd are going to be your backs. And I was hoping to see more Raleek Brown, but he had 1 catch in the game. He moved to wide receiver. But we know we've got to talk about the defense, right? Like, we've got to go ahead and address that. And boy, did Twitter explode about Alex Grinch's defense. The speed D. First off, Bear Alexander dropped, 20-something pounds? He's just over 300 pounds now. He's gotten smaller. I don't know how many 300-pounders they actually have on this team. If I'm correct, they've dropped a few of them. But the most important thing with the entire conversation is that USC's defense is going to be a problem. And this is why I say that. Now, I know USC fans going to jump in here and say, oh, you're an Oklahoma fan, you're a hater, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. Yes, throw all that at me. The score was 21-14 at the half against San Jose State. 21-14 at the half. That was your score. Is that a good thing? Like, and I'm 100%. I'm keeping it a buck with y'all. Is that a good thing? Because this team only lost 4 games last year, so they were 8-4. They weren't bad. What's that? 8-5, 7-5 actually. They're 7-5 last year. I mean, they made a bowl game. They weren't, awful. But I'm asking the question, is it a good thing for USC to give up 14 points in the first half and only be up 21-14? Because at a certain point in that game, San Jose State ran out of gas. Second half, they basically were cooked. And then USC exerted their dominance on it. And, I was looking at some of the PFF scores or whatnot, and Bear Alexander had a solid game. He was disruptive the entire time. He just didn't get very many stats. So I don't look at stats fully. I go and look at the analytics on that because I want to understand how many hurries they had, how much pressure they put on the quarterback, and how often they disrupt plays. And Bear did not have a bad game. But overall, that defense did not look good. And so it's funny because I'm looking at this. USC was what, a 30-point favorite in this game? Let me give you the exact number so I can remember. They were 31.5-point favorites at kickoff. 31.5-point favorites, and they won the game 56-28. That's not covering the spread at all. And so I thought that was funny because I was like, okay, let me look this up. And of course, as soon as I'm thinking about what this spread looks like, George Stoya from On3, Sooner writer, put up Lincoln Riley's against the spread numbers. Lincoln Riley's teams are 38-1 all time against the spread. 39, 38, and 1 all time against the spread. USC fans, you tell me, hop in the comments, is that a good thing? At Oklahoma, he was 31, 31, and 1. So about 50%. As in, don't bet on Oklahoma at the time when he was there to cover the spread. And it looks like as he's going into his time there at USC, what's that, 8-7 against the spread since he's been there? Should I bet on USC games? Because this is 31.5-point spread, and it was not covered. And it was mainly because the defense was just giving up yards. Like, who was that? George Schwartz over from Fox Sports he basically ripped up the defense. Jeff Schwartz. I'm sorry, Jeff. He basically ripped up defense because of that 3rd and 22 that was given up, and the quarterback ran for 30 yards. And it was all because it was like an exotic defensive play with a whole bunch of blitzing, and it just left an open hole. It looked like they were supposed to be in the quarterback spy, but it appears that they was actually spying the quarterback. And Jeff lost his mind. He's like, what is this? Like, why would you do that? They did it. They gave up the yards. And I mean, I know that all y'all are going to defend. Man, I'm looking at y'all's message board now, man, and y'all have been flaming your DC. And that's definitely not a good thing. And I talk about this. USC gave up 198 yards, and one of the running backs for San Jose State actually rushed for, hold a second, let me give it to you. He was averaging 5.2 yards a carry, and overall the team averaged 7.3 yards a carry. One running back, 6 carries. Quiet Conley, 6 carries, 108 yards, 18 yards per carry. Longest was 57. Quarterback, 52 yards rushing. The point is, you get a scrambling quarterback, a good scrambling quarterback, problems show up for USC. So I'm hoping schematically that changes, but I'm just telling y'all now, that's my concern. If San Jose State they had 198 yards pass, 198 yards rushing, so they had 396 yards total in the game. I would not fault that if USC was up 28-0 at the half. I cannot be mad at y'all at that point because in the second half they're just going to be throwing the ball nonstop, and at some point you're going to be converting. But 396 to 501, giving up 24 first downs to your 25. Everybody tried to tell y'all, man, y'all got to be concerned about that defense. Week 1 can do nothing but tell you that you're executing like you're supposed to, or you're doing really bad, or there's a sign of worry. And I'm gonna tell you now, I'm worried about USC. That's just me. Hop in the comments, let your boy know what's your thoughts. Are you all worried about USC's defense? I would love to hear from you all. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Before we do that, if you've made it this far, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We would love to have you join this college football family because we're talking all college football all the time on this channel. Mainly a lot of Oklahoma stuff, but we are branching out, especially with this podcast, as well as the videos coming down the line. So the more of y'all that show up, the more I can dedicate time to building more videos. And so we're going to dive into my preseason top 25 tiers. We're going to preview the games that are coming up on Friday. So you'll have my preview of the weekend games. And we've got the Florida-Utah game on Thursday. Oh, my goodness. College football is back, baby. I am so excited. So I may talk about that game. Actually, we'll recap that game instead of actually talking about it. But let me dive into my top 25 preseason tiers. Now, there's my disclaimer. I do not like polls the first 4 weeks of the season because it's 2 reasons. One, you really do not know, unless it's the number 1 team in the nation. And I'll say this, I'll even extend grace to the 4 teams that did make the playoff. They should probably be ranked in the top 4 just because they made it. I don't mind extending grace for that. Even a fluke season like TCU, they deserve to be up there because they did make it. And Georgia should be number 1 because in order to be the man, you got to beat the man. So if there's one team that's a definitive, it's always a number 1. And I think that the playoff team should be loaded around them, regardless of how many players leave and all of that. I think they should, just to start. But that's also why I hate any poll before week 4. The second reason is this is used as the measuring stick for when the college football playoffs comes up. So if you beat a team in the top 10, and by the time the rankings come out, they're not ranked, you get credit for beating them as a top 10 team. And I don't like that. I think that you can give people credit for beating ranked teams after week 4's rankings come out and you see that teams are ranked. No? Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Y'all tell me. But I don't think I'm crazy. I don't think I'm crazy because that is one thing that I have always professed. So we're going to talk about what these polls look like. And so I did a video on the Sooner or Later Sports Show, my other pod, and we talked with Brian Clinton over at Heartland College Sports, and they had their top 25 poll. We went through it. We talked about it and what made sense. And so from there, that led me to make my tiers. So here's the tiers. Let's start off. You can see it. I'm going to put them all up here and I'm going to talk you through why I picked them. So tier 1 is my title contenders. These are teams that I feel like can win a national championship this year. And a lot of my factors that come into play is the quarterback position. If there are veteran presence or we're looking at new quarterbacks. And in some situation, a new quarterback based upon historical value, they definitely get some sort of lenience. I do extend grace for teams that have top 10 recruiting classes. And I'll explain with some of them that I have that are even considered playoff contenders to where you'd be like, why are they up there? And I'm be like, there's reasons. A lot of them, it's historical that they are consistently up there. And until they're knocked down, I'm not going to go off of tradition. I like going off of history and what we've seen and how they perform. Recruiting classes, because your national championships are traditionally teams with top 10 recruiting classes over the last couple years. That is of utmost importance. Then I'm going to look at quarterback. Quarterback is in that mix because you can win a national championship in college football with a great quarterback. We've seen it done. And that's usually the most important position anyway. If you got a quarterback, you can have one that can carry you through college football because you play enough teams that don't have enough great players that you can do that. And then the last thing that's a factor for me in my polling is just if I like you or not. And it's no shade. Most of my like and not like is all based upon your historics. Is how historical of a team you are, how many wins you've gotten, how you played. I am very particular about that for that particular reason. So let's dive right into Boom Shakalaka, our preseason top 25 tiers. First off, tier 1, we have Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Florida State, Michigan, as well as Ohio State. Michigan, Ohio State battles back and forth on who's going to make the playoff because ain't nobody else in the Big Ten going to beat them. I like Florida State and LSU this year because of last season's play and the players they brought back. Then the best part is they play each other week 1. And so we're really going to have a measuring stick for them to understand exactly what teams they are. And then, of course, you got to put Bama and Georgia up there. Now, it's funny because everybody thinks Bama is done. It's over. Bama, the dynasty's probably falling apart, and everybody's thinking Georgia's a dynasty, and Georgia's not. Georgia's got 2 national championships in a row. That's awesome. Very few teams can do that. Saban's been doing this since, 08? So until I see Bama win only 7 games in a season, there's zero reason for me to ever think that they're not going to have a contender. Heck, if Bama doesn't win more than 10 games, if they win 9 games, maybe I'll have some concern. But I think y'all have to understand something about Bama, and this is why Bama's going to be up there next year. Bama's my number 1. I'm just going to tell y'all right now. I don't care what the season looks like. Bama's number 1 next year. They had 9 5-stars in the last recruiting cycle. Yeah, they landed 9 of them based on 247. They'll all be sophomores in Saban's system, and they should be terrified. You should all be terrified at that. They'll have a quarterback situation finally figured out, but you should be terrified. Oh, and even outside of that part of it, 90% of their roster are blue chips, 4- and 5-star players. 90%. They're higher than Georgia this year. Georgia was that last year. I think Georgia was in the 90s last year. This year, Alabama leads the nation. They're 90% blue chips. Bama's going to be really good next season. If they're not good this year, those players are locked in. They were pissed off about going 8-2. 8-2 is bad for Bama. Remember that. Y'all saying the dynasty's over at 10-2. So those are the teams I feel like you're contenders. That's your 6 in Tier 1. Tier 2. This is fluid too. Remember, this is going to change as we go through the season. Tier 2. This is when it gets fun. My playoff contenders. These are teams I think that if they put the season together right, they're going to the playoffs. And these are no particular order. Clemson, Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Tennessee. I know. Got teams in there I got questions about, especially after last year and some because of historicals. But I'm going to tell you this. All these teams have been pulling out top 10 recruiting classes over the last couple of years. At least top 15. Top 10 is the most important, but I think Oregon has a conference that is winnable, that can lead them, and a schedule that's winnable that could lead them to the playoffs. That's what Oregon's got going for themselves. Tennessee looked really good last year, and I don't think that they slow down with Joe Milton. Joe Milton's been there 3 years. That's why they're up there. Oklahoma, very bad year last year, but they were so close in every game. All they got to do is get across that line, and guess what? It looks like this year they're going to cross that line. Vegas has them 9.5, and I'm betting that over. That under is a trap. They won 6 games last year. Why did Vegas give them 9.5 points? That, to me, is a trap. Because Texas, who else I have on here, won 8 games last year, and they're also 9.5. That makes sense. For Oklahoma, it should have been 7 or 7.5. They gave them 9.5. That tells me that Vegas knows something. That tells me Vegas thinks something. And they want everybody to bet that under. Texas, I have Texas in here because their top 10 classes have gotten better the last 2 years. Sark has actually been recruiting a lot of trench players that move the needle for what Texas is trying to do. And they're not just skills guys like the other coaches like Herman and Strong. That's a difference maker for Texas. And Clemson's Clemson. I'm not going to ever bet them out. They have a quarterback. They had Cade Klubnik, who played last year. Klubnik got some game last year, and we know what he can do. And now that they've got him and they've got Garrett Riley, Lincoln's little brother, who can draw up some stuff, he's going to make it so easy for Klubnik. Yeah, I'm betting on Clemson to potentially be able to make the playoffs. So they're going to be a contender. There's someone that has a chance, so I'm not betting against them on that. Tier 3, New Year's 6. Then this one is the most important, I tell everybody, is because these are the teams I think can make it to one of the bigger bowl games. At larges, all of that stuff. They'll have just enough wins to make a New Year's 6 game. Cotton Bowl, Peach, whichever one is not the playoff that year. This year, I have a feeling that these teams can do it. And I have Utah, USC, Washington, 3-pack, 12 teams, which is crazy. Notre Dame as well as UNC. I know, UNC is the weird one. And it's all because of Drake May. Drake May is really good. Really good. And Notre Dame showed me something in game 1, I think, of game 0, in week 0, game 1. They kind of cheated in this one because I wasn't going to have them this high, but I think Sam Hartman, even though I did believe in Sam Hartman going there, I was like, no, they got a veteran presence who's thrown for 4,000 yards, 3,000 yards a season. He's got a lot of yards, a lot of miles. He knows how to play this game. He's got a lot of snaps. He probably can go in there and be really good. yeah, I think that they have a chance. Washington, Michael Penix Jr. has to be healthy. Period. USC, they got to figure out that defense. They would be playoff contenders if I believed in their defense. And their stretch next season, yeah, they've got so they play, what's this? They have they got 1, 2, 3. They got 3 games. Play Nevada and Stanford. They get a bye week, and then they got 9 straight games. 9 straight. No built-in bye week in between there. And from there, and so after they play Arizona, they travel to Notre Dame. Utah comes to the crib. The California game's a travel, but it's not really a travel because Cal's right there. That's a trap because they're going to overlook them because then they have Washington coming into town, and then they travel to Oregon, and they finish the season up with UCLA. UCLA is not ranked right now, which is fascinating. That's 7 straight games of work. That defense is going to be pushed to the limit. So I got to put them New Year's 6 until I can see that their defense can actually do something in that stretch. I'm not a believer until you show me. And I've seen what some of these teams and what some of these coaches have done. One thing I tell you I've never seen with Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch is them actually having a defense that stands up through the test of time of a season. Go look at the history. Last one, we've got bowl-bound teams. Now, these are all teams I think can make a bowl game. And, this is fascinating. It's the biggest of them all. But I honestly think that you can get a bowl game out of Wisconsin, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, TCU, Texas A&M, Oregon State. I know Texas A&M is a weird one, right? I'm talking about them in a minute. Oregon State, Tulane can keep the party going. Kansas State, Miami, right? When they're 2. UCLA, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, and Kentucky. I think all of these teams can make a bowl game. Yeah, I know. The Texas A&M one is the one that I know people are going to balk at, and even Miami. Both of them have some pretty, crappy seasons that they shouldn't have. But I'm going to be honest. I do think that they could potentially make a bowl. It feels like they are in a situation where a bowl game is possible. Not saying they will make it, but it feels possible. And I'm not going to even shy away from the fact that I think that they can do it. I mean, it's going to take them some work. They've got to do some stuff right. And I don't know what this Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher relationship is going to look like, but if they can get past their egos and actually coach up all of these 5 stars that they have left, well, the ones that are left there still, and all this money they send on players, they should be fine, just as long as it's not a super toxic. I do believe that there's a chance that they can do something this season. We just got to see if it doesn't implode. And then Miami, granted, Miami is Miami. Historically, they figure out some stuff, in the early 2000s. We just haven't seen anything since. And it's just more so the school doesn't care about football, but now they do. Everybody looks like they care. They've got investors, quote unquote. They've got boosters that care. We've got to see if they can make that happen. The Nebraska and Colorado ones, as well as Wisconsin, are the ones that are really intriguing to me the most. New coaches. You got Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. You've got Matt Rule up in Nebraska, and Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, over there at Colorado. And for me, it feels like they might be able to turn those teams around quickly. Colorado, for example, over 50-something transfers in. So with all those transfers, can they get the continuity needed in order to make it a run? And to be honest, looking at their schedule, I don't think their schedule's that hard. I don't think their schedule's one of those that will make it to where, it's impossible for them to have a good year. I actually like what Colorado's schedule looks like. I do think the TCU game is going to be tough for them, but that Nebraska game is going to be fun. It's going to be 2 new coaches duking it out. And then, of course, from there, they've got 2 tough games in Oregon and USC, but I think they can beat Arizona State. They're dealing with a bunch of problems with, they self-imposed 1-year ban of the bowl game, which I think was stupid, but I digress. That'd be another conversation for another day. Stanford. Yeah. Stanford. Exactly. But outside of that, I think they have enough here to win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 games. I got a bowl game. I got bowls. I got a bowl game. I got 6 games. I got 6 wins in here. If they could do that, they'll be fine. 6-6 leads them to a bowl game. That's all that matters. They could potentially win 7, go 7-5. But I think they can go 6-6. I don't think that it'd be that hard for them to do that, especially having players like Travis Hunter. They got a quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. Don't sleep on how good Coach Prime's kid is. Shedeur was a 4-star quarterback in high school. Shedeur is legitimate. He can actually play quarterback. And so if he goes out there and shows out, there's a chance that Coach Prime's going to have themselves something special. So that's one to keep your eyes out for, because I do think that one is a realistic one. So those are my tiers. You see them. We're going to leave them here for right now. Hop in the comments, let your boy know. What's your thoughts? How you feel on it? Do you think I'm crazy? I don't mind if you tell me I'm crazy, but at the same time, don't negate what I say and why I say. I have my logic behind it. You have your logic behind yours. And a lot of the situations for most of us sports fans is the eye test, and I don't always do that. I need to throw in additional factors. But I do think that a lot of these teams here can make it. This is my top, 30 teams, roughly. So this is how I feel. If you have made it this far and you like the content, hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. We would love for you to join us. I plan on doing this every week. Like I said, every Wednesday, you'll have this. I'll break down, the last week's games going into new. I do a live stream for Sooner fans and college football fans. We'll probably talk more college football on top of our Sooner stuff every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. I may move that up to 5 once the NFL season starts, just to, keep it NFL. So just pay attention to the alerts and stuff. Just hit the bell notification. That way you're alerted on it. And so also, I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. I got one more segment that I forgot. I did not air last week. I was talking about Jim Harbaugh and his suspension. And I think I need to go ahead and add this to the show. And that'll be our wrap up. So Jim Harbaugh, he has now him and Michigan have decided to self-impose a suspension for the, first 3 games of the season. And so let's talk about that. So for those that are uninitiated, Jim Harbaugh was suspended recently by the NCAA for lying to them, basically. He lied. He said he lied to them, and that was why he was suspended for the first 4 games of the season. Him, as well as Sharon Moore, which is the offensive coordinator / offensive line coach, they're both supposed to be suspended. Well, then all of it changed that he wasn't suspended at all. And then things just changed on Monday, as it was announced that Harbaugh and Michigan has decided to do a self-imposed suspension of himself for some weird reason, to say that they are going to, just do it themselves. I got it. Michigan did an investigation, decided that it makes sense to suspend him for the first 3 games of the season, which are for East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. A gauntlet of games that Michigan should be terrified about. They could possibly, that they're not going to lose any of those games. But the self-imposedness of this is fascinating to me, because why does Michigan feel like they need to do it? The way this is going in the conversations with the NCAA, it appears that this is going to drag along. They are investigating still. It's level 1 violations. And the violations that they're being accused of is this. And that is this is from the NCAA, Derek Crawford. The Michigan infractions case is related to impermissible on and off-campus recruiting during the COVID-19 dead period and impermissible coaching activities, not a cheeseburger. Now, we've got to point out the cheeseburger portion of this here, because when I put out a short about it, and you can check it out here, it was funny because the whole thing about Harbaugh and his suspension was over a cheeseburger. At least that was the rumor. He had bought a recruit a cheeseburger, and he wasn't supposed to during a time that he wasn't supposed to be really interacting with them. Sure, a cheeseburger. I mean, it's not as bad as Tennessee giving players money in McDonald's bags. My bad. Chick-fil-A bags, and getting themselves put in trouble, but it was supposedly a cheeseburger. And now the NCAA is saying it's not. And so with this, as they continue, it's not uncommon for the Committee on Infractions to seek clarification on key factors prior to accepting. And so for the most part, the NCAA is still trying to figure out, negotiate what his suspension will be. They're trying to figure out how they want to do it. And by the way this looks, it's going to take them the entire season to figure this out. Why? Because the NCAA does everything as slow as humanly possible. So nothing that comes from this really truly matters in the grand scheme of things, because by the time they suspend him, it will probably be the beginning of next season. And at that point, there's a chance he'll be in the NFL, because every single year Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL, right? Exactly. And so with that being the case, we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know what the final verdict's going to be. But all we do know today is Michigan decided to do a self-imposed suspension, which I guess I could commend them on. They decided that they're going to go ahead and get in front of it. Hopefully, get some good graces with the NCAA and say, hey, look, we're taking care of ourselves. We're self-imposing. We are following rules. And it's just more fascinating that, of all people, it's Harbaugh that lied to them. Like, he wants to lay it out. He says he can't. But overall, this is basically for him lying to the NCAA about him doing on and off campus recruiting that was impermissible during the dead period. So overall, this is a big nothing burger. It's not going to really mean much. They're going to suspend him the first, like I said, he would be suspended probably the first 3 or 4 games. They weren't going to go further than that. And if that's going to be the case, that was 4 games that didn't matter, because when you go look at Michigan's schedule, I mean, did you really think that East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and then Rutgers were going to be 4 games that was going to really cause a big problem for them? No, not at all. And the good thing for Michigan is they brought back a lot of players, brought back their top running back in Blake, as well as their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. So they're set, and that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line is probably going to continue to do it, because Sherrone Moore knows exactly what the heck he's doing. So that's being the case, I mean, we'll see what it means. But I'll give it to Harbaugh. This is the quote that he stated. I will continue to do what I always tell our players and my kids at home: don't get bitter, get better. So he's just going to take this in stride. He's not going to be pissed off and fight it. And so I get it. So the question now is, what is its implication for these games? So as I mentioned, they have 4 home games to start the season. East Carolina's coming to town on the 2nd. Then they've got UNLV on the 9th, Bowling Green on the 16th, and then Rutgers shows up on the 23rd, in which the game that Harbaugh comes back will be the game when they head to Nebraska. And so luckily for them, Harbaugh can be involved in everything in the day-to-day during the week. He just cannot physically coach them over the weekend as if they actually need him to coach them through these 4 games. No, because luckily for them, going to Nebraska and then going to Minnesota, these 4 games are tune-ups to help them in preparation for their run, literally for the Big Ten championship for a 3rd straight year. And if I was to give them a prediction, I'm going to be doing my Unfair Sports poll come here in next Wednesday before the first week of the actual season starts, because week 0 doesn't count to me. I see Michigan running the table again. I think that the battle with Ohio State's going to be fantastic. The big game's going to be amazing once again. And they're at the Big House this year. Woo, buddy, we're going to have fun. But overall, what really does Michigan have to do to be worried about? Like, what are the true concerns? And everybody's talking about it. Like I said, going through the articles, looking at it, the biggest thing with it is they wanted to get ahead of things and show the NCAA that they're trying to, take care of things in a house and make sure that they know that if they were going to suspend us, that's fine. But we were going to do our thing and make sure that we take care of things at home. So again, shout out to Michigan on that one. We'll see what it looks like long term, if it affects anything. But again, I've stated this over and over ad nauseum in just this segment in the last 5 minutes. It don't mean much. They've got 4 favorable games, so they'll be all right. All right, that's it. Now that's the show. Thank y'all for pulling up. Please hit that like button if you're new to the channel. Subscribe. We would love to have you join this family. And besides that, we'll chop it up, I don't know, in a few days. Peace.